All right, fifth graders, fifth graders. We are going to go to our lesson today on page 42 of your packet. Now, we are only going to do 42 to 47. I know that Miss Nash and Mr. Miller have assigned 42 to 52, but I'm changing that a little bit. They know about it, and it's okay. All right, so let's take a look at 42. I'm going to read this and then I'll guide you through the questions. All right, so this is entitled, What Was the Great Depression? Your grandparents may have talked to you about the Great Depression, but it was a really tough time in our country. All right, so let's look at words to know. As you read, look inside, around, and beyond these words to figure out what they mean. All right, so we're going to use context clues to find out what financial and economy mean when we get to them. All right, so let's begin. It says, when World War I officially ended in 1919, Americans were tired of the war and ready for good times. In the early 1920s, there were plenty of jobs in the United States. People earned good incomes. Businesses grew quickly. During the Roaring '20s, American consumers enjoyed spending money. Those who could not afford the most expensive items borrowed money so they could buy now, pay later. They bought new homes, they purchased cars, washing machines, and other large items. They also bought smaller goods such as toasters and irons. To meet the demand, factories rushed to make even more products, but companies made too many goods and people stopped buying them. By the end of the 1920s, warehouses were filled up with merchandise that no one bought. Factory production slowed down. Many workers lost their jobs. One thing I should have mentioned that I hope you're reading along with me and not just listening to it. Okay, that would be the best thing to do. All right, so let's look at this writing here. I hope you all remember what this is. Think about it a minute. See if you can remember what word this writing next to a picture is. I hope that you all recognize that as the word caption. A caption, C-A-P-T-I-O-N, that's an A, not an O. It looks like an O, doesn't it? Okay, so the writing, oops, there we go. The writing, excuse me, next to a picture is the caption. And this says during the 1920s, many Americans grew wealthier. They spent their money on new inventions such as the electric refrigerator, shown in this photograph. Now, I bet this refrigerator looks a lot different than yours, doesn't it? But that was what they looked like back in the 1920s. All right, I'm going to move along, so I have to erase this, or when I move this up, it's going to erase the word caption, but that's okay. All right, so let me move up. All right, so paragraph number 2. At the same time, many Americans decided to invest money in the stock market. They hoped to get rich quickly. The stock market is a place where shares of stock in different companies are bought and sold. People hope to make a high return by buying a stock at a low price and selling it at a higher price. From June through September 1929, the prices of stocks soared. That means they went way up. Then prices began to dip slightly. Nervous investors began selling millions of stock shares for less than the purchase price, losing billions of dollars. On October 31st, 1929, the stock market crashed when stock prices dropped sharply. The crash caused panic. People took their money out of banks and banks were forced to close. More than 600 banks failed in 1929. The stock market crash led to a financial crisis called the Great Depression. Okay, so a financial crisis is a money crisis. Okay, people really, they lost a lot of money, they lost jobs, so it was a real problem. So it was called the Great Depression. A depression is a serious slowdown in the economy that causes people to lose their jobs and businesses to fail. All right, and let's see, economy has to do with the wealth of a country or a region. Okay, so at right before the Depression, the economy was great. People had jobs, people had money, people were buying things, but the Depression caused a slowdown in the economy that causes people to lose their jobs and businesses to fail. Now, I believe up here it asked us to mark, okay, see if the word, look around the sentence to figure out what they mean. All right, so let's, from context clues, I know I told you, but let's look at this. A financial crisis. Well, up here they were talking about money. So when people took money out of the banks, it caused a real financial or money crisis. So money, stock market, that has to do with finances as well. Okay, and then down here, the economy, okay, that has to do also with jobs in America. Okay, our economy was good, but the Depression caused it to go down. Okay, so in America. So let's see, at the start of the Great Depression, about 1.5 million Americans were out of work. By 1933, about 13 million Americans had lost their jobs. To earn money, jobless people sold apples, pencils, and other items on the street. They shined shoes or washed and mended clothing for others. They sold their personal belongings. Some were forced to beg for money. Okay, you know, we're kind of going through a similar kind of thing right now with this coronavirus. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and if they lose their jobs, then they lose their income. And so I don't think that we're going to have this kind of financial crisis like the Great Depression, because we kind of know how to avoid that. But right now, during this very tough time, a lot of people are out of work. All right, so we can kind of relate to that, this Great Depression. All right, so let's move along. I have to move this up. So without an income, thousands of jobless Americans lost their homes because they did not have the money to pay rent. If they had borrowed money to buy a house, they could not pay their loans, so the banks took their home. People were forced to live with friends or family members. If necessary, they stayed in churches or rooming houses. Sometimes the homeless built shacks from old crates and scrap metal. These temporary homes lacked electricity or running water. All right, so let's take a look at this caption to this picture. During the Great Depression, many Americans lost not just their jobs, but also their homes. For shelter, these men and women built shacks on the outskirts of cities. So there's a picture of the shacks that were built. All right, so moving along, we have another picture and another caption. In some cities, long lines of people waiting for food were a common sight during the Great Depression. Charities gave bread and soup to people who could not pay to feed themselves. All right, and let's finish this up. It says about 2 million homeless men, women, and children drifted around the country. They broke the law by hitching free rides on trains. They rode from place to place looking for work, food, and shelter. Millions stood in line millions stood in lines for free bread or soup that charity groups provided. In 1931, charity groups in New York City served about 85,000 free meals every day. Under President Franklin D. Roosevelt, America's economy slowly improved. Roosevelt's plan to fix the nation's money problems was called the New Deal. To improve the situation, the government passed laws that changed banking systems, provided the needy with aid, and created new jobs. In 1933, about 25% of Americans were jobless. By 1937, the unemployment rate had fallen to about 14%. Unfortunately, nearly 8 million Americans still did not have jobs. The Great Depression lasted for more than 10 years. In 1941, the United States entered World War II. Factories started making war supplies such as airplanes, tanks, and ships. As the need for war supplies increased, businesses hired more and more people. America's hard times finally came to an end. All right, so let's take a look at our questions. It says, use what you learned from reading the article to answer the following questions. This question has two parts. Let's see. First, answer part A, then answer part B. So read this sentence from paragraph 1. By the end of the 1920s, warehouses were filled up with merchandise that no one bought. All right. What does the word merchandise mean as it is used in this sentence? All right. Let's go back and see if there's anything in paragraph 1 that would give us a little bit of a hint. But you may have already heard that word merchandise before. So let's see if we can skim for the word merchandise. By the end of the 1920s, warehouses were filled up with merchandise that no one bought. Okay, so up here it was saying that those who could not afford the most expensive items borrowed money so they could buy now, pay later. They bought new homes, they purchased cars, washing machines, and other large items. They also bought smaller items like toasters and irons. Okay, so it sounds to me like merchandise has to do with things that people buy. So let's look down here at the best word that they give us. All right, so A says goods, B, large items, C, shares of stock, D, jobs. All right, so you might not be familiar with the word that goes with merchandise, so let's try to eliminate some to help you. So in that first paragraph, we didn't talk about jobs at all. Shares of stock, we hadn't gotten to that. Large items, well, it had also said that small items were sold. So the answer is goods. And you may not have ever heard that word, but goods has to do with things that you buy, okay? So the answer there is goods. Goods is the same thing as merchandise. All right, let's move down to part B. All right, so part B says, which detail from paragraph 1 best supports the answer to part A? So we answered that A was goods for merchandise. So let's take a look at this. All right, that no one bought, even more products, factory production slowed, or lost their jobs. Well, when they were talking about this, is the warehouses were filled with goods. Okay, they had a lot of them. They were filled with merchandise. So the best answer there, and this is another word that kind of seems is the same as goods and merchandise, they had even more products. Okay, They had a lot of merchandise, a lot of goods, a lot of products. So the answer there is B, even more products. All right? Okay, I'm going to read 2 and then I'd like you to answer that one. So let's move on to 2. All right. All right, let's take a look. The author uses a word that means a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. Underline a word in the paragraph below that best represents that idea. So we're going to look for a word that means a time of trouble, a time of difficulty, okay, a time of danger. So let me read this and then you see if you can find that word. The stock market crash led to a financial crisis called the Great Depression. A depression is a serious slowdown in the economy that causes people to lose their jobs and businesses to fail. At the start of the Great Depression, about 1.5 million Americans were out of work. By 1933, about 13 million Americans had lost their jobs. To earn money, jobless people sold apples, pencils, and other items on the streets. They shined shoes or washed and mended clothing for others. They sold their personal belongings. Some were forced to beg for money. So which word in there means a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger? And you underline that word. All right, let's move on to number 3. It says, what is the best meaning of the phrase hard times in paragraph 7 of What Was the Great Depression? All right, before we go up and look at it, we're going to look at these choices. A period of great difficulty. B, a time when farmers couldn't grow crops. C, a time when jobs paid low wages. D, a period of mild sadness. Okay, so hard times, paragraph 7. Let's go back up. The Great Depression lasted for more than 10 years. In 1941, the United States entered World War II. Factories started making war supplies such as airplanes, tanks, and ships. As the need for war supplies increased, businesses hired more and more people. America's hard times finally came to an end. Okay, so all of this talked about the difficult times that America was going through during the Great Depression. So let's go back down here. What is the best meaning of the phrase hard times in paragraph 7? So those hard times, were they a period of great difficulty, a time when farmers couldn't grow crops, a time when jobs paid low wages, a period of mild sadness? All right, so you pick which one you think it is from what we read, and then we will go on to part B. Which sentence from the article helps the reader determine the meaning of the phrase hard times that is as it is used in paragraph 7? All right, so let's look at the choices here. When World War I officially ended in 1919, Americans were tired of the war and ready for good times. Okay, I see what we're doing here. So even though this was said in paragraph 7, what's another sentence in the article that helps you determine that meaning of hard times? So when World War I officially ended in 1919, Americans were tired of the war and ready for good times. B, from June through September 1929, the prices of stocks soared. Remember, soared means go up. C, about 2 million homeless men, women, and children drifted around the country. And D, Roosevelt's plan to fix the nation's money problems was called the New Deal. So which one of those describes hard times? or difficult times. All right, and number 4. Let's look at number 4. Read the sentence from paragraph 1. To meet the demand, factories rushed to make even more products. Which dictionary entry best defines demand? Okay, so back up here in this first paragraph, they were talking about how World War I was over and they were ready to buy things, large and small things, and to meet the demand, factories rushed to make even more products. So what do you think demand means there? Let's look back here at our choices. Okay, let's see, where was that? Here it is. Is demand there a forceful statement, like when you demand something, when someone demands something? A demand, is it a wish? C, is it a strong need? Or D, a question? All right, so which one of those best talks about to meet the demand of all the people that wanted things? Factories rushed to make even more products. People thought they needed it, whether they did or not, they just wanted things. Okay, so which one of those, forceful statement, wish, strong need, or question, do you think the answer is? And mark that. All right, let's take a look at this. Short response. Paragraph 6 of the passage states, by 1937, the unemployment rate had fallen to about 14%. Define the phrase unemployment rate. Support your definition with at least one context clue from the passage. All right, let's look at the short response question. It says, paragraph 6 of the passage states, by 1937, the unemployment rate had fallen to about 14%. Define the phrase unemployment rate. Support your definition with at least one context clue from the passage. All right, let's go back up to paragraph 6. All right, so let's just look at this. It says, okay, in 1933, about 25% of Americans were jobless. By 1937, the unemployment rate had fallen to about 14%. So is there a clue there in that sentence of what unemployment rate means? What do you think? I hope you said jobless. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that one. Hold on. Let me see here. Let me go back to this one. All right, so jobless is a word that means being unemployed, without a job. So that's a context clue that tells you what unemployment means. Another one would be did not have jobs. Okay, that's another one. Jobless means without a job, it means the same thing. So that's how you know, when we take tests and things, always go back to where they tell you to go and reread it, and that way you can find what they're asking you to do. So unemployment rate means the number of people without jobs, and the context clues or clue would be jobless or did not have jobs. So let's go back and write that in our short response. So, oops, I keep losing my, oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Oh boy, I'm still learning. All right, let's see here. We want to go to text. Okay, so let's do this. And you can write on your form or your paper. All right, so it's asking us to define unemployment rate. So the word unemployment rate means the number of people without jobs. Okay, we did the first thing. Now it says define the phrase. We did that. Support your definition with at least one context clue from the passage. All right, so the context clue that I found in the passage was the word jobless, which means the not having jobs, not having jobs. All right, so guys, we did exactly what they asked us here. I know they give you all these lines, but you know what? Just because you see a lot of lines there doesn't mean that you have to fill them all. If you can answer it by just using even 3 or 4 lines. Now, I know I typed it, so it's taking you up even less space, but don't be scared off when you see all these lines, okay? Just do what it's asked you to do, and it asked you to define the phrase unemployment rate, which we did, and then it asked you for one context clue from the passage, and we did that with the word jobless. All right? All right, so let's move along to the last question, and then we will be done. All right. It says, in this lesson, you figured out the meanings of several challenging words and phrases. Explain how you can use these skills to help you better understand the text you read in school. All right, so you just write a little sentence there about how using context clues will help you to understand text that you read in school. All right? All right, and that's it for what we're going to do. We just did 42 to 47. All right, I hope this helps, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye, and stay safe.